the thing on the current question right now is basically that like Hopper would be that genuinely in like the person will be believing that like the doctor like the Bruno's lab that basically is like actually a genuine doctor and basically that like he has like absolutely no hidden intentions or like any sort of future connection to that Bruno's experience or anything, especially when the temperature. But it is also like basically even while during that the appointment of that while taking Will to that Paranasana laboratories to see if doctor like basically that purpose had even allowed them to actually even inject on Will and that definitely my doctor impressions are lack of we don't have that absolute trust in that doctor like and maybe that only believing in that possibly believing that that doctor that absolutely genuine. It's definitely my other impression. So like my secondary impressions were like basically what might have happened would be like after like runners like I'm looking like it might have been to stop this current software like runners that might have been like the next in charge of that runners experiment and everything. Definitely my other impressions. So like I'm looking like coupling like just like foreigners that which like of my doubt shockingly find out and coupling that with like I was opening straight away like I was opening that what like once like that lock that replaced for enough and took charge of from that at that point like what he might have been his orders and have put his orders what they might have done would be like they might have took down that go that on that French like area that says that energy laboratory and everything. So like Hawkins energy laboratory and everything like they made have took down that board and everything and everything that what like according to the orders of like what else they might have done at that point might have been like they might have built a wall covering that the pathway within that like the energy laboratory leading to that his home were like the gate to like the battle project. So like that pathway leading to that his home where the gate is like that pathway might have been like totally closed off with by building an actual wall. It might have got closed off with remember pyramid. This might be according to like the secret strategical plan of that doctor. Definitely might have been to trick laptop and all things. So Represents the lesson like Hopper and Joyce have seen that gate within like Chronos and Matthew and Hopper having like gone to the seen that gate twice and then entered through that gate to like the Battleworld and everything. So then definitely was able to electric to like this is that Hopper is like in like the police department that can like in order for them to like totally trick now for that talk of the electric Hopper might have been an extremely high priority for me. Definitely my president to like stop having Hopper on the tail, like onto that his strategical planning, they might have closed off that area by creating like an actual wall to make it seem as like that cage is like completely was like removed and basically like all the experience that like laboratory was like shut down and basically like the Surya pressures and like what that doctor might have done back then might have been that basically after taking charge like he might have closed off like and built the wall and closed off the only pathway leading to that where like the gate is and basically he might have then told him to like basically create like a different a door on like a different direction on like a hidden location within like the lab to basically that way for them to be able to like enter into that very same room where like the wages so like they might have secretly that way like maintain like the gate in its like open up state while also like they might have that way but clear the thing like freaking Hopper as well as that George as well that way. So, you know the grand version that after like pronounced that like which might have been totally all over like the new factor and basically that one that of replace runner and lead to charge of that energy laboratory at that point like I'm like he might have not only take down like the board of that Hawkins energy laboratory alone but like he might have also like use this influence and everything to like basically even public false news as well that basically like with like runners have like basically the Hawkins energy laboratory has been like suddenly shut down and closed off and then might have I don't just like he might have given like false news. So like I'm looking like that way to like if hope up and it's definitely not trying to so like I'm looking that way like I'm looking maybe after that like I'm and that was like all this might have happened during that exact 1 month period after like Hopper and Joyce had saved it from like the bad word. It might have been in between that 1 month period that his Hopper might have done all the things that you know the so like especially after like 1 month one like will have the like first episode of like basically seeing the uh seeing this like parallel world from like the real world and just like vomiting and all that. Like basically at that point I was different like Hopper since like maybe Hopper might have by then like seen all these news about like the Hawkins laboratory being shut down and everything. So like I'm like yet like at that point like Hopper might have only felt that basically like the other doctors won't be able to like able to understand like the situation, but well, might have been along the lines like Hopper might have felt that actually the situation of Will possibly being connected to like the parallel might have been like an initial suspicion that like Hopper might have had. And those might have actually had so like they might have straight away initially during them the that might have then Will might have those like straight away like Hopper and Joe might have taken with straight away to it might be like so it might have wanted to like take Will to like a normal hospital, but like it might have been Hopper that might have been like adamant about like taking Will to that kind of lead laboratory of that run up and like Hopper might have been hoping that there will be at least someone there and like definitely since like Brenner experience and everything like since because the fan of might have already lived the news and like Hopper Brenner's like experience being set down and everything so that way like Hopper might have only felt that it would be only them that like would be able to like understand like the situation and everything. So like I'm thinking then Hopper and Will for the first time might have brought Will to like that Brenner from the laboratory at that point I'm thinking like definitely that doctor this very same doctor might have been present in that for another laboratory at that point and I'm like him on like talking to Will that might have like strongly that realize like the possibility might have strongly seen like the discomfort that Will might have told him that which like Will might have already told him about like basically like seeing like the parallel world from like the real world as well as like both things like that part of like that so kind of thing like Will might have told him. So like at that point I was like what that doctor might have thought felt might have been that that doctor might have seen this as like an ultimate opportunity, especially because of like one of the experiment being to create like the ultimate weapon like code 11 like that sort of thing on the brain response that like even though for enough like initial experiment might have been to like create like the ultimate weapon and then like once that Pranav had succeeded in that experiment through 11 like at that point I was like it might be at that point like when 11 started like displaying all of the powers like telekinesis and telepathic powers and everything like that. Yeah, and maybe it might be at that only at that point that like Pranav might have even seen like the possibility of that him being able to like open up like through 11 like him being able to like open up like the parallel world basically have get access to like the parallel world and everything. So like I was like at that point until that point like I was like Pranav like initial goal might have been to like create that ultimate weapon and basically that way to like make a lot of money might have been like Pranav like initial only intention to remember the generation but like I'm like after creating the ultimate weapon of 11 that like at that point Brenner might have wanted even more money and might have seen like the possibility of like even more money and wealth as well as like his fame as well like so that if that Brenner using 11 is able to like open up like the parallel world and that way be popular to be able to like be known all over like the world as like the very first scientist to be able to that has opened up like the parallel world obviously, I don't might have been that runner's plan at that point, the limit of section, which like I'm like the previous night before that might have intended to that use 11 with like passenger corporation might have intended to that use 11 to like open up like the barrel world like at that previous might have been when one of runner's team members like one of the runner scientists like might have only betrayed runner and might have tried to like steal all that glory of like being like the first scientist to like open up like the parallel and that might be how that he might have only like let out 11 and might have used 11 to like open up like the parallel and like participant like totally contrary to like all of their expectations like once this wants up that way had basically entered into like the real world and participant like certainly Brunner might have before like creating like the being created like when I might have never expected like the parallel world to be like an extremely dark and dangerous place like filled with like all these monsters and everything. It's definitely very famous. So like I was saying that might be the reason for like I'm looking like Bernard might have totally been optimistic thinking that basically like opening up like the parallel world would bring in all that wealth and fame and glory and everything. It's definitely one of the famous. So But like I'm looking once like Bernard might have realized that the situation like they was like the monster like entering into like the real world and don't seeing like the parallel world and everything. Like at that point, I was looking like Bernard might have really felt that basically if anyone even finds out about it, if the outside world even finds out about it, like Bernard opening up with the parallel world and like basically Bernard will be getting into like serious trouble and like getting all that. Would be along the lines like rather than getting back would be along the lines that one of might have figured at that point. It might have been what might have happened is definitely when like the might of frame ratio that like at that point with like Japan word being so into danger like Brunner might have like rolled back to the like origin goal of like basically just creating like the alternate weapon through like 11 and basically handing over 11 say the both people and basically to make all that money might have been like Brunner's goal but like for instance like the moment like the gate was opened in like Renaissance the laboratory itself that 11 had escaped from the Renaissance the laboratory. At that point, like Renaissance ultimate goal might have been to like get 11 back as soon as possible before like 11 uses her powers in like the outside world and basically the rest of the world finds out about like Renaissance experiments on lab 11 and all that which like Brenner would be absolutely certain that like things like that would only get run up to serious trouble like basically Pranav might like since like Pranav might have distractors that was going on of like get handing all of the weapons to like those people and getting all the money like and everything. Pranav might have been desperate to like find 11. Might have been like the situation with like Pranav at that point of the movement because yet like everything like Pranav back then even sending his son Shepherd into like the battle world might have been for like Pranav even while realizing at the by then like that the battle world with like a dangerous and empty, dark and cold place, like still runner might have been like trying to like basically see if there should be like anything that might have in like the battle world like when you remains in like the battle world of like anything that might benefit like runner experiment even more like basically using which is like runner to like basically like make even more money might have been along the lines like runner might have tried and attempted through Shepherd and that might be the reason for like Shepherd back then Varane from Shepherd like back then like entering into like the battle at that point. So definitely my very impression as what like what might have happened, especially my friend. And if the impression right now is what like the current doctor like who would have totally replaced Varane from the and basically would be currently in charge of the second active with Varane and the right now. Like this is what his ultimate goal might be like would be most likely as well and the would be to like make a lot of money and I was from like, in order to do that, like I'm looking, and he would be like right now, like the person would be like that. Okay, the right now, like the person would only believing that basically like that 11 had died back then. So he would be like totally unaware of like 11 being alive. And like the person just like, so, like I'm looking like he might have totally been disappointed that like basically that that experiment to like basically hand over like the weapon like basically ending up being a failure through like 11 that might have been like along the lines like he might have felt disappointed at that point like the scenario that I'm observing. But like I'm looking like once that dog took charge like I'm looking like he might have instead decided that basically since like 11 has died like basically he might have decided to not perform human experiment, keep continuing like human experiments, but like instead, like he might have decided to like basically to like eventually capture one of like the monsters from like the parallel world and basically to like put those monsters, one of like to capture one at least one of like those monsters and put it into captivity and basically to experiment on that monster and basically to make it take orders of from him like basically that way to like experiment on it might have been his goal and that way then for the stuff to like figure out like how these monsters like multiply and that way like basically create like an entire army of like monsters that will be like experimented upon and that way you'll be taking orders from like specific people like or like the like basically that way to create like an army of monsters that will be taking orders from humans that can basically to hand them over to people who want lecturer content basically that way got into that make even more money would be that than Brenner would have stuff than Brenner could have even been able to would be along the lines that elected person this doctor would be only seeing so like his eyes would be right now set on like basically capturing like monsters and creating like an army of monsters that will be taking or humans. And he was using that as like the like ultimate weapon that he would like sell for like a huge price, especially maybe for him. So it would be like while he would and this would be the other reason for like just like stop under like the command of stop like basically a station like right outside in like the right outside of like one of the laboratory in like the real world in like the parallel world itself like them setting up a station like thing and then fixing up that station like thing and everything like might have been especially to like basically eventually have like people from like the lab be sent over to like the parallel world with the goal to like capture at least one of those monsters, definitely face the monsters, definitely my thing. So like this would be like his ultimate target and the stop was like current ultimate target and his ultimate goal. And it might have been when he might have set up such a goal that like the like Hopper overrate Hopper as well as like those might have brought Will to like this doctor's lab definitely my birth level. So like I was doing him on like basically clearing what Will has to say, what like Will's difficulties and everything like basically after after being saved and like the Hopper might have told him about like the condition which like Will was in. So that thing of Will's mouth like when like they had found Will in like the parallel world and how they had saved it on basically like precisely 1 month after that like Will even vomiting that parts of that monster and Will like seeing like the parallel world from like the real world. So like I'm wondering like one all this was like revealed to like the author by Hopper and Joe by Boris Hopper and Joyce and when like at that point I was wondering to Doctor with like villainous intent to like create the ultimate monster army. Like he might have only seen Will as a like ultimate opportunity. Yeah, basically he would be like the only thing along the lines right now that he Will would be like slowly transforming into that monster. And I was like he might have only felt that it is this monster and uh, Hopper might have only told about like how he had seen that in like the parallel world in like the Hawkins school in like the parallel world like how he had seen that a lot of like skeletons as well as like dead bodies and everything like basically like, about like what Hopper had seen like basically Open those thing like I might have told him. So like I'm looking like uh what that doctor might have felt might have been like since like he might have like on interaction with Will he might have figured that he will have like, an exceptionally high IQ. So like I'm looking that he might have felt that basically that doctor might have felt that basically his monsters might have that found that might have seen Will as uh, might have seen a lot of potential in Will solely due to like with high IQ. So that these monsters that might be the total reason for like these monsters. So that because of that reason, like these monsters might have no decided not to even after abducting it in the battle world, like these monsters might have decided not to take Will's life, but to like turn Will into like one among them into like a monster and to do that, like they might these monsters might have placed that thing over like Will's mouth when like Joyce as well as like Hopper had found Will in like, the battle world with the along the lines like this doctor might have straight away after him just definitely never very much. So like this doctor was only expecting for like eventually for Will to like slowly turn into like a monster of himself. Will to like not die, but like Will to like eventually turn into like the monster itself. Eventually it's like the scenario that everyone that basically the doctor would be totally coping and expecting like the scenario that everyone he gave the reason for like in the name of treatment like he would be like only freaking Joyce as well as Hopper and he would be like patiently waiting until like will turn into until like will's lack for difficulties and discomfort so ends up getting worse and worse to like to the point where like Joyce and Popper would be like would be bringing one day in eventually with just like appointments like repeatedly happening. Like he will be only the doctor will only confident that like eventually in one of like the appointments like or like even before like the due date for like the appointment itself for like he will only expecting for like a buried Popper as well as Joyce like rushing with Will to that very same towards that stop in that turn of the laboratory to but still because like they won't have like anywhere else to go any other doctors like they won't be able to like show because like they won't be able to like explain like what's going on with this at that point. So like definitely they will be eventually coming with to like that very same doctor will be along the lines of like a conference that he will be have and like once like will be getting more and more closer to like getting transformed into like the monster like basically like during then like behavior would be getting worse and worse. So like at that point like Hopper and those would be worriedly bringing Bill themselves to that house. So that like at that point that house would be planning on freaking like Hopper as well as Joyce by saying nice and really telling them that basically like we have to admit that like they have to like admit Will and treat Will and basically in the name of that treating by admitting will in like the lab that for them to like okay contain with in tight and secure area within like the lab and for then like without much rate like will be going into like the monster and basically like they would be able to perform the extra experiment on like the monster at that point. On the monster build at that point, would be like it's like plan right now, like the doctor's plan right now is just leave into the ambition. So and his plan would be to like basically eventually like admit will in the lab and like at that point so three hundred that like that doctor will be like planning on that way dying to like operandos and basically in the name of like treatments of like will like and like to totally to like tell lie to the operandos that basically they won't be able to like see will basically until like the treatment is over like around this line and say some false reason for that and basically to basically conduct like the experiment on like the gel and basically once like will turns into like the monster and once that they are able to that make will take their order like basically until that point will be like the initial phase of like their experiment. Actually, if I go like a conductor of the class and of the plan, like he might be totally planning on like freaking Hopper and Joyce and they in the name of like admit having to like admit will in like the name of treatment in that lab and they will be totally planning on putting will in like a contained like place and like then to like tie will up and basically so that and then to wait until like will would be like fully transforming into like the monster so that like even and like I'm like it will be such a tough kind of thing with which like they would be like material with which like they would be like tying with up that basically to that way keep like the monster in tied up state while like experimenting on like the monster so that like the monster won't be even able to like create a portal and escape is also would be part of sort of doctor's plan. You can remember brain. So like that way to keep that monster will like a tied up situation in within like the lab and until the experiment is complete and this will be able to take their orders and listen to their orders. Like this will be like their plan and once they would be done with that for them to straight away and at that point, I'm they were only seeing their experiment as the main phase of their experiment as of creating the ultimate weapon as over and easily. At that point, for them to totally straight away leave the lab and basically actually leave the lab and basically to head off somewhere else with the monster will at that point and then to for them to basically have will multiply basically that will be their next step and so that they won't and so that Joyce as well as Hopper won't be able to capture them or bring them to won't be able to do anything to them for them to leave Hawkins at that point that will at that point is will be their plan the minimum range but the minimum range right now that is the destruction of the crop countries from a 3 mile radius is surrounding not with home, but energy development. Also, since it's the energy development and the emissions, it should be less of so spread creature of substance that basically similar to similar creatures I'm looking would be escaping from the parent world and then bringing to these creatures from the system definitely might won't be able to won't be having the powers to create portals and that was the sitting in the from that this creatures that would be actually the tiniest form of the faceless monster and the faceless monster would be the tiny form of the final full form which would be required giant monster sitting in the brain. So when this monster is in its tiny baby stuff form at that point that it won't at all have the power to create for its name of the brain. So I'm looking what might be happening right now, might be happening right now is that they look from the gate from within the case to like the parallel world, which is like always open within like the energy laboratory and like all these like the tiny dark like creatures would be like monsters would be like totally like in like the middle of the night like they will be like totally entering into like from like the parallel world to like as like a whole group that they would be like entering from like the parallel world to the real world through like the energy laboratory and basically would be like escaping from like the energy laboratory through that very same pipe through which like 11 had like first escaped from like run of like energy laboratory. So like through that pipe that leads to that box like I'm losing like that way from the gates through that pipes like all these tiny monsters would be like escaping from like the energy laboratory and that way like destroying like all these tiny monsters would be what that would be that destroying all the crops and trees and everything like at like a 3 mile radius surrounding that the energy laboratory. Especially my personal impressions to as for like what might have happened, especially with but the impressions that like even though like the destruction of like the crops and trees are like at like a surrounding 3 mile radius from that energy laboratory, still my personal impressions that like the doctor right now while putting on his fake act in front of like soccer as if like he doesn't know anything like I'm going to be like still like I'm going to the doctor would be like naively assuming that basically it will be all Will's doing and definitely remember the rest of that because like I'm definitely not even when there are like CCTVs all throughout even the interiors of like the energy lab they still might would remember that like even like they might even like these monsters are like so extremely tiny that are like monsters are so extremely tiny and like um that they might have not been even caught even like the CCTVs the even the like due to like their extreme tiny size like they might have not been caught and even noticed even through like CCTVs this entire time definitely my the reimbursement. So definitely was the reimbursement that the field of the reason I'm also bring like the doctor in charge of like the energy laboratory right now like he will be well fully obviously I'm going to running he will be totally well fully aware of all the great number of like and trees and everything being destroyed in like the town of Hawkins, like all that thing and issues that going on, like he was only when I'm fully aware of it. So you might not only may just straight away assume that it will be all will a single will doing alone. Definitely might have been very much. And my just represents that like the doctor might have totally felt that basically that for that great number of crops and trees getting destroyed and all that would be like totally part of like will like it's like conversion and transformation, slow transformation into like that phase of nature would be along the lines that the like the doctor and like the energy laboratory would be like straight away assuming definitely and thinking it's definitely one of the so like the name of the remission right now, as for like Copper right now, threatening the of at like the energy laboratory and like Copper even telling him how like Copper has kept his side of like the real application to act about like the past experiment. And they believe that he needs the doctor needs the convent of but even the remission that like yet like so definitely just in that time like Copper might have like trusted like the trusted like those people who after like experiments but like those people who are like remaining at like the energy laboratory like Copper might have kind of trusted them to like a great extent and might have also like basically also due to lack of a feeling as if like he has no other choice to like basically to save will after like when issues start happening and everything. So like I'm going to like definitely that would be the total support like of even allowing those people in like the lab in like the remaining people after like Brenner's like the remaining people in like the lab to like basically for that doctor and also like basically even inject on will and all that like and to take will protect the treatment there and everything. But like I'm like still there might have still existed that fear and worry within that pop up when it comes to like 11 like Stephanie would say because that like the possibility of like even of like runners that like in the remaining team members of like runner still the possibility of like them coming up from like 11 is like basically offer lets 11 out of that hidden location within like that house within like the port and basically that 11 comes out to like the public like to like the public like basically at that point like the remaining members of like runners team like the positive like then coming after like 11 there might still exist that suspicion within that comma. So also that may consider impression. So that this might be the reason for like another thing like Hopper might be even waiting for like the rest of time like basically for like for years to pass and basically for Hopper to like basically still not hear anything about like anything about like basically like the team members of like or like any sort of like basically for even like Prana's energy laboratory right now itself like for them as well to like maintain that whole track record of like not doing anything suspicious for like a few years, and that will be what like Hopper might be planning for like so like if that happens and like the test of time that basically ends up being at a success, then at that point like for Hopper will totally think that at only at that point like it would be like safe to like basically to let 11 out and to let 11 see careers to take up to like careers. It will only at that point it will be like safe for 11 will be along the line of everything, and there will be also like that basically that certain extent of like a selfishness within like Hopper because of like Hopper like getting the feeling of like basically living with his like daughter back during his phase when Sarah was like like there will be that thing as well within Hopper that will be also playing into like the reason for like Hopper being so extremely or concerned about like 11 and basically keeping 11 in that hidden location for how in stay within that forest. But at the same time, like it's very same offer itself, like basically being so casual about like will and basically like letting like the people at like the remain people at like the brain of that like basically even inject on will like it's definitely might and take wills for like the treatment there and everything. So definitely might be the impression right now. So like the name of the impression right now as for like Nancy is wanting to that basically go up to a radio circuit and need stop that number definitely the first reason would be for like Nancy to like test like the radio frequency so that like basically that to that we see it that basically that so that Nancy would go the thing that it like Brenner's team remaining members of even after Bruno's death, like even to the person like Bruno's team is like still continuing the experiments and things like then like the possibility of like the communication between them that basically possibly like the accessible possibility of their communication right from communication being accessible by like testing like the radio frequency at like a radio section multiple times like on all sorts of data range like will be along the lines to see if like the communication still exists if like by the remnants of like the of like experiment in would define out would be like the reason for like Nancy right now wanting to like go up to like a radius act along with Johnson. Like new so like I'm like what like Nancy and Johnson to be like totally finding out like a radius act. I'm going to like would most likely like Nancy like Nancy and Johnson like I'm going meeting Bob and like them like basically I was going it to be like a free day at like a radius act. So like I'm going like that way like Bob allowing like Nancy and Johnson to like basically set the radius and everything. So like I'm looking at that point like Nancy and Johnson like basically like testing and setting up like the frequencies through all the ranges like and I'm looking at them like trying it out for like for a while and basically then like I'm looking at Bob telling them that like basically that okay so like basically that it's time to like so like I'm looking like at that point for Bob returning eventually and telling them that basically that they won't be having like much time to like basically some sort of like a program will be about to happen. So like I'm looking at they Nancy and John at that point won't be having much time left. So like I'm looking at Johnson will be telling Nancy that basically that like like the at that point I was telling Johnson telling Nancy that basically you know that that like the communication like Brandon's team have totally ended their whole experience and everything like basically it's like there there's no communication between like the elements of like when a team will be around like Johnson would tell Nancy. So like Johnson would be getting up and as they will be about to leave like I was like Nancy would be still sitting there and then Bob would be telling Nancy to like basically like that like they don't have much time that basically Nancy and Johnson need to leave. So like at that point, I'm also like right, and Johnson would be telling Nancy that basically has to go. So like, but like I'm also at that very last second would be when I'm also like Nancy probably while continuing repeatedly had seen the frequency finally Nancy getting the right frequency and Nancy and Johnson at that point in shock but like but like for Bob at that point won't be in that room. So like at that point like Nancy and Johnson being shocked to like hear the voices of like and it would be like the voice of like the doctor in like who's in charge of like Bernard's lab right now. Especially like about the possibility of like what Nancy and Johnson at that point will be hearing would be about like a one possibility is basically through that private interaction like I'm looking like that doc talking about like basically especially after like offer right now telling him questioning that doctor about like this whole incident with like the cross and like reason all of like the things like getting explored like a 3 month is around like then available maybe like I was thinking of remote possibility that like maybe only at that point like usually maybe like him finding it out like basically the doctor then find realizing that the remote was so like that if the number like he might have like straight away after like after like he might have the doctor might straight away check like the lead up synthesis and he might have only found like carefully inspection like he might have found like those in like the middle of the night like those tiny mods of like creatures like basically leaving like the parallel world and entering into like the real world through that open gate within that then available and those that monster leading through the pipe uh, like the tunnel like pipe leading to the fall at some point of the laboratory. So like maybe like that way like the remote can also do that and that way like a lot of the find out would have like so you find that farms that out and this be a lot of finding monsters from like the real world spread into like the real world. So like everything like the doctor in like in a worried manner like in a worried and concerned manner like basically the spotters to like the team to like basically track down and eliminate all these monsters and like capture one of them and eliminate all the remaining rest of like those monsters will be along the lines like him giving the orders to his men. Just basically like would be what like an ancient orphan would be like shockingly hearing through like the radio frequency at that point. It's like 1,000 scenarios that I'm right. From radio track it's like 1,000 scenarios that I'm the other possible scenarios basically for like maybe like him like basically the like what they will be hearing would be like maybe like the doctor attack then appeal about the saying how like when this basically like transforming into like the monster even faster than we had expected. Maybe like a topic related to like build like transformation of like build transforming into like a monster along such lines like that also thing like that of the lab speaking between his like body fully like the would be like the other possibility of like what like happens or some really theory so like the by adjusting the frequency like one positive the other positive that I'm looking. The third positive like maybe for them to hear like maybe like Doc Owens like right now telling just like team members that basically that very night for them to like totally capture them to totally that approach for the, or like them to totally attack like Will's home and basically hopefully have that win and get away in like the get away with like capture win and have that win and get away with and like basically move on to their and they would be like maybe I'm having like another new base like this might have been built after like Burners, but or like they might have already have like another base for like then I'll be about it. So like for them to like basically change their base like that very night for them to like have that will and like fix to like that other phase would be along the lines like like because of like this whole current hopper situation maybe like definitely because of like hopper being with the release like like maybe like or the law and this like team it will be afraid to eliminate hopper especially on those papers. So like so they would want for that attention falling onto the lab or like falling onto that situation with Black Hopper by like unlike taken back when they have taken the life of like Benny like basically fall into Black Hopper being like policeman like they might only the doctor and seeing that only might fear like the possibility of like that gaining a lot of like attention like Hopper like probably gaining a lot so like they won't be unlike when they had tried to like cover up like how they might have they covered up like Chinese stuff as well as like how they tried to like basically cover up Will's missing by like missing a pregnant body of Will like basically they won't be able to do the very same thing like Hopper's case it's like eliminate Hopper will be along the lines of like maybe like they will be thinking and they might have that fear. So like maybe especially due to this reason with like Hopper right now like even like threatening the doctor to like convince Hopper and go up to like that spot of like that whole like destruction of like the crop countries and like infect and report the findings to like Hopper like they really feel like the doctor is in such a situation like maybe the doctor ordering it like seem to like they really have that will that very night and basically for them to like shift to their new boss and that way to continue their experiments on will there. from there while keeping built-in like activity. Maybe along such lines like I was looking like the or that of would be used to the segment, possibly being what like Jonathan and Nancy would be hearing from radio chat while adjusting the frequencies. Just like the third possible opportunity that I'm covering another range. Like the minimum redemption right now, so like 11 right now, I'm seeing the stranger woman where still like the minimum redemption right now, is definitely for like by setting the minimum redemption, like by the time like 11 would be making it to like pocket school, like I'm like they are like what 11 would be rotating would be like my boost and plus them and with along with like McPhee, like the scenario that I'm delivering. So like 11 would be totally seeing that seeing this new girl along with them and like 11 will just straight away think that they need within the time of like this 1 year, like I'm presenting like then that point temporary only believing that basically within the span of like this 1 year, like basically along with all the remaining friends like Mike as well has totally forgotten about 11, maybe like along the line temporarily at the scene just by seeing that side like 11 totally straight away. That would be the first impression for 11 and 11 would straight away assuming that like I'm like 11 at that point getting angry and like sad and disappointed, extremely disappointed. And I'm looking like 11 without even meeting my like I'm looking like 11 straight away like leaving. Just like leaving school and like that only and making it back to like that house people in like that process like the scenario that I'm looking yeah. And I'm looking to be to that sudden rage and like the sudden sadness like basically on seeing those new girls that like might become a person that might have a certain like such a scenario happening is like the scenario that I'm looking. So like but then again like I'm looking like even after like even though 11 would be like well and fully aware of like my only like trying to like communicate with like 11 like basically through the radio phone they after like 11 disappearance like automatic memory. So like I'm looking still seeing the side of like basically Maxine like only alongside my piece of understand which would be like straight away giving that feeling to like 11 as if like still they had only focused number 11 and replace 11 with, like just neutral vaccine. Then on the lines 11 will feel so like I'm still the remember that it will be on the 356th day, like the anniversary day after like 11 had disappeared like that basically like it would be on that night like of like the anniversary day of like the sleep 356 day of that Amazon like while Mike would be trying to like communicate with like 11 through the radio phone. Even then like Amazon 11 will be totally something and 11 will be like not about wanting to like respond back to Mike. So like Amazon Mike even that night like Amazon like would be repeatedly multiple times and that would be like trying to like communicate through like the radio phone and like hoping like something like a miracle happening on the anniversary day due to like it being the anniversary day or something would be around like mine would be totally sitting and like as like Mike would be losing all hopes and like as like and I was during Mike repeatedly attempting to communicate through like the radio phone all the way until like 11:59. Like at that point, I'm looking for like things like 1 minute and basically since it would be like the day after like the anniversary day, like I'm looking maybe like by then like Mike was during that basically so the time as like Mike would be about to step away from like the radio phone at that point was when I'm looking like in the event Mike sorely sharply hearing like the voice and that then like I'm looking like the clock striking 12 o'clock like scenario that and those the like the name of coaching to reimbursement right now for like those right now are really working from are really taking the cassette from like the video camera and like checking it like I'm looking like it would be uh all due to like those really wanted to find out who was it that had fully like okay the name of the reimbursement but like my reimbursements were like Bob might have been lying Stephanie was like absolutely no one might have actually fully well Stephanie was the reimbursement my comprehension that like that might have been totally a fake and absolute fake like said by Bob to like George just to like for him to like get even closer to George is the new comprehension because like I'm looking like Bob's goal like the name of the like Bob might have wanted like George in his life all the way back since like school days since like Bob's school days Stephanie remember the remission though like sitting remember the remission that back then like while Hopper and Joyce might have been in a relationship, like Bob might have been extremely jealous of like Hopper. Definitely remember the mention. So and still think remember the mention that like, back then like Hopper might have been like the one that might have during school days like might have been Hopper that might have even bullied Bob as well. You know, might have been so like since then like I'm sort of like Bob might have been seeing like Joyce as like way out of his league and it might have been his like ultimate goal in one of his like ultimate. It might have been his like ultimate goal back then in his life to basically to have to get choice from of who definitely one of the question. So like and like that Bob might have never grew out of it and then developing and grew out of school days and I'm like even to the person like I'm like Bob might be trying to do exactly that like from like trying to change his status from a boyfriend to like be wanting to like he would be that Bob would be like most likely was trying to like be like the husband of Joy is definitely one of the question. So in order to like get there, like to get married, like for example, but like Bob, it might be like an absolute lie that Bob might have told Joyce like about like Bill being bullied because like maybe like Bob might have totally felt that like Joyce might not talk about it to like neither Bill or like Bob might have not accepted like the possibility of like Joyce actually right and it's Joyce actually checking like the cassette in like the video camera and basically like finding out the truth, the things. So like I'm looking like Bob even telling Joyce about like Will being bullied at school, like I'm looking like and I think like she even telling Joyce that really she has seen like video camera or something like what a thing. So like I'm looking all that would be like an absolute lie and I'm looking Joyce right now finding out that like an absolute lie. So like I said right now, it's like the scenario that I'm looking at. And this would be the point from which like I'm looking like Joel would be like seeing like Bob indifferently, definitely one of the thing. Until this point I'm looking like Joel is only seeing Bob as like a harmless innocent person, but like from this point on like I was like so it's only like seeing Bob that he's not as if like he's not that harmless or innocent. Uh, definitely my friends and definitely was from like the moment like Bob will be returning back to Joyce's home itself. Like I'm wondering Joyce straight away questioning Bob about like as to like why he lied with like Joyce and everything. It's definitely not the friend. And I'm wondering like that whole conversation eventually resulting in like maybe like Bob getting like kicked out from the house. So like about this and like that conversation like spiraling into like basically like Joyce even taking out Bob's from his house, depending on the direction. Like Bob's pro colors, like basically like appearing during that whole heated conversation, which I'm different like initially happening, like was scenario that was like, Bob at that point like initially talking to like Joy, when Joy was questioning Bob, like I'm looking Bob like initially talking in a polite manner, but like eventually as like the conversation gets heated up, like I'm sort of initially the conversation getting heated up and Bob's pro colors like showing and basically Bob that totally uh, in an insulting manner, like talking about like will and everything, like just like clinical scenario that I'm developing, and that would be like the last pro where like I'm looking like Joyce will only can stop out of like the house, like the scenario that I'm looking, and maybe like Jonathan as well would be like reacting in like a serious manner, and basically that way, like, from getting kicked out from like the office, like, any important scenario that I'm putting and altering. Like, that's what I'm looking at the right now, for language right now, finding out like the grains in that video footage of like the shape of like that fighting monster. It will be because we have this thing that will be only due to that wins power, like, due to like, like, the dark, like, tiny monsters, like, I'm feeling like monsters even tinier than dark might be like right now that in the photo will be like your own from within will is the name of the then it could be that due to that monsters don't from within will that like will could be able to see like the parallel word from like the real word and everything is definitely going to that would be like the power actual powers of like the monster especially belong to like that monster that owns definitely can which definitely like those powers of will might have affected that since that video camera was like basically lying on the ground close to like where Bill was during then like something like that what Bill had seen like basically of like the huge spider like monster like that then like basically like been seeing that like with like it will be like solely like the power of the monster going from within Bill and like that powers might have also affected like the nearby video camera lying on the floor and that might be the potential reason for like the grains of like that exact shape and grains like forming exactly along the shape of that exact spider monster that Will had seen back then. Definitely on like the video footage, definitely. might have said, because this might be like how that might have happened. Certainly, not close to the reimbursement right now. Like the name of the reimbursement right now, as for like build right now about to tell my about like the possible connection of like as that mode of now having a connection to like the ParallelWorld as well as like Dustin right now about to show that to like or the class like the name of the reimbursement right now is that like for like that won't be within like box of Dustin right now is like the scenario that I'm doing. Right now, I'm going like Dustin totally opening that box in front of class to show class. But like I'm doing like the box would be empty because like I'm doing like that might have totally escape from the box. That means like the so and I'm doing like uh, so like I'm doing right now felt like my through will like even realizing the connection of like the monster of that to like the paddle board and basically that way like I'm doing at that point felt like my player rushing and running towards like trying to like find the thing so that like with like the intent to like inform the and basically so that like they can like take eliminate that and basically like take the life of that monster with this intent as Mike would be rushing towards like Dustin like Amazon like Mike as well shockingly as well as Bill shockingly finding out that monster has escaped with like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And I'm going to bring like at that point definitely I'm going to bring at that point like definitely that way like so due to like the scenarios where I'm going to bring like that box would be empty like class totally thinking that is really when I'm going to bring like process class totally thinking that things like totally messing with like class can be really like class maybe like totally warning Dustin and basically class straight away leaving it like the scenario that I'm going to bring. But like I'm going to bring like once like Mike and Bill will be showing up and stop me finding out that it's the mods of finding mods of that have escaped. Like at that point, I'm looking like definitely Mike's totally telling them that like they need to find that and they need to like eliminate that as soon as possible before it eventually goes up into like the facelift mods of the along the lines like I'm the of like a conclusion that like Mike would only come into it like the scenarios that I'm bring. But like I was bring like definitely and that would be like the that would be the decision of like Mike as well as like Bill. Definitely, I'm going Mike as well as Bill. We're always seeing such a positive that that don't have to be like the baseless monster and that's the new version. But like I'm going like and I'm most likely putting like even Lucas as well. A bit only expecting that would be on the side of like Mike and Bill. This time is like the scenario that I'm doing. But in the case of like Dustin as well as Maxine, I'm different like them. Like even Dustin, like I'm different like even while like seeing such a possibility, like sharing about such a possibility, still I'm different Dustin a bit only of like the mindset that basically like that like since like if Dustin that like to not take the life of that like they have to find that and basically that like Dustin would be taking good share of like that and that like the amount of that like Dustin so much that basically even if that eventually ends up turning into like a basic monster, like if you totally listen to Tuscan, would be along the lines of like a stand in which like Tuscan would be. It's like my country. So definitely Maxine as well would be like totally siding with Tuscan. Like without Maxine even realizing that what like the taste with monster is like and things like also like the scenario that I was like. So that way like I'm preferring once again like maybe like split of like the split of opinions on something like maybe once again another the dispute and the fight between like the friends. So definitely going to that way like Dustin totally like temporarily leaving part of like the friendship with like Dustin and Maxine going out on one side with that absolute intent to like find that before Mike and the others like find this because like they will be fearing like that if Mike and the others find that like they will be straight away take the life of that which like would be like the last thing nothing else like Mike would want. So like that like the scenario that and the and then like so with that putting on that profile then left so it's like the friendship group in like two things the theme of Dustin and Mike and the theme of Mike and the others like putting in the relentless like search to like find that, but like I'm moving them not being able to like find that, and I'm going to make eventually I'm going to bring like the next time Dustin would be like even seeing that would be in like the very different future, and by then like I'm going to bring maybe like it would be when like that would have shown up to like reach like the level of growth of that of like becoming like the faceless monster once like that would have grown to like the point of reaching like the transformative form of like looking at the face of the monster. Like at that point, I'm looking like maybe like would be like next time Justin will be seeing that reflected scenario that I'm looking. But still, I'm looking like it could be number different of maybe for it to be a scenario where like dark or nothing like seeing each other from like a distance. So they bring like somehow like maybe the body language of staff will be like different from like the other monsters. Like this is like an eventual future scenario, different future scenario that I'm looking at. Doesn't only being able to like sense that like it's dark or something, and other than like still like that, they won't be able to like go up to each other or anything. Yeah, but it will be in like some sort of like an intense like kind of like a situation that the student will like seeing dark from like a distance or something. And another thing, it would be like splitting the member permission that it would be only in like severely distant future where like that would have grown up and reached like the stage of like it's like fully grown stage of like becoming like five like monsters. So the only at that point that like nothing and that would be like finally reuniting in like the very distant future. And that too would be like an extremely intense situation. And I was like the scenario to be like maybe like about to take the life of like a grown up Dustin by then. But like right at that very last second, like I'm looking like, and my candles won't be able to like, do anything at all. So the giant spider like now would be able to take all of their life. But like at that very last second would be when like now would be like carefully like will be totally by totally recognizing stuff at that point. At that last second, like the scenario that is. So like that way, like stopping its attack and basically dark totally like listening to like taking orders from customers like the scenario that I'm looking. So like that way like I was my user understanding like basically fighting against like the other monsters used with like dark by the fighting by alongside them like by the side like and to like everything the same to be like saying all the orders that the thing would be given it like given the scenario that I'm looking and that way like I was like eventually in that distinct future like Dustin stand up like basically that even after like realizing around the different like nothing will be of like the stand or like nothing will be telling them that like even if the dark eventually goes up to be left but it's not it's still that like as long as like Dustin take care of it like it is only listens to Dustin because it's like Dustin will get off the line but like the stand up Dustin and remembering that stand up something eventually like the very distant future ending up being a right with like the distance with the scenario that I'm looking just like that one black tap will be rating its length and spider like form and basically taking order. So that's like electric simple just like the windows scenario that I'm selecting and the frame. So like the clear of the frame person right now, but like the most of the like about to break out of text the box and the synapse right now about to open the box and basically like my fin about to like open like the door to the room like, to that room like I'm putting right now the scenario to be like the moment the thing will be like opening the box like I'm doing the totally because like right now possibly like the food might have kept in that box way long up than like he might have or like I'm putting it might have been due to like the possibly growing a bit bigger so that like not to be changes of getting correct amount of the in that small boxes definitely may be present. These monsters will be like growing like these liquids so definitely may be present. So definitely like the moment testing will be opening that box and also bringing stuff like totally like acting jumping out of the box in an extremely and moving in an extremely fast and out of control manner. So like right then itself like I'm like Maxine will be like opening the door and seeing and like the moment Maxine will be opening the door, like I'm dark totally jumping straight towards like Maxine and Maxine would be like totally scared and everything like dark totally that way like leaving that room and basically dark totally escaping just like the scenario that I'm going to and dark totally quickly escaping from the school is like the scenario that I'm going to and I'm also thinking like maybe like a few students might even see that, but like I'm looking like before they could like do anything like I'm looking at that would be like straight away escaping. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. Those students I'm looking maybe like trying to tell the maybe class or their teacher like as to like that about like the scenes of the teacher. Definitely I'm also looking like class not really none of the teachers like totally buying that and basically like that way like I'm looking like at that point I was looking like dark at that point dark would be like escaping and so like that way that causing like basically a clash like a dispute between like the team of like Mike and friend like between Dustin and like Mike and Dustin like the scenario that I'm living and that way like that dispute resulting in like Dustin along with like Maxine like Dustin taking Maxine with him and basically them setting off on their own to like basically to find like that before Mike and Dustin could like because of like Dustin having that fear that basically that that basically like Mike and Rory finds it like they will be taking eliminating like some like that given scenario that that way like two separate search parties happening with like the search party of like Mike Lucas and Vic and like the search party of like Dustin and Maxine for to find the scenarios that I'm looking with the main of the transition right now with Nancy right now calling Barbara's mother and just before Nancy even talking about wanting to go to a radio chat the show of scope definitely Nancy's plan would be most likely to either have the phone conversation of Murray Bowman or set up some sort of a record at the home of Murray Bowman and basically definitely because Nancy might want to because currently Murray Bowman is only investigating Barbara's disappearance Nancy both might definitely want to know basically he knows basically definitely because Nancy being a certain of the involvement of Brenner's team in the missing of Barbara still since right now in the present as well this is Murray Bowman is investigating Barbara's disappearance if Murray Bowman knows about has any leads on basically if the remaining members even after Brenner's death the remaining members of Brenner's team still being active or not basically to find out about this exact thing could be the surprise reasons or Nancy and Jonathan while they had gone to Bob's shop they might have gotten it's just the surface of repair shop Nancy might have had so definitely my very ambition right now is that Nancy won't be lying out to her mother right now about getting her Walkman fixed that she, Nancy and Jonathan's plan would be to right now to ask ask Barbara's mother about where Murray Bowman's address is and then for Nancy and Jonathan and possible Nancy will be only telling as for why Nancy wants the address of Murray Bowman I'm looking Nancy is only telling Barbara's mother that Nancy is genuinely concerned about the updates and needs of his belief that Murray Bowman has any leads to the missing of Barbara and everything along as it out of friendship will be along the take act I'm looking at that point and Nancy would be talking to it would be the way Nancy would be talking to Barbara's mother just so that basically Nancy could get Murray Bowman address the scenario that I was in that way Nancy telling Barbara's mother she wants to meet with Murray Bowman and personally talk to him and find out the details and everything so that way Nancy and Jonathan getting the address of Murray Bowman and them totally most likely going up to the house of Murray Bowman, which well would be in a house in the middle of the forest or something exactly how the house where living right now is living with Operandos, but even Murray Bowman's his space as well will be in where he will be staying for currently for the at the town of England or that I'm looking that might be in the middle of this some forest or something so I'm looking Nancy and Jonathan uh, finding that house and basically they will be going up to that house and they are I'm definitely Murray Bowman will be present definitely so I'm looking Nancy and Jonathan showing up and then they them get totally talking to Murray Bowman in a concerned voice I think them even while Nancy and Jonathan only believing that they leave Barbara that them totally will be putting on a fake actress and they won't just genuinely concerned for Barbara and literally they want to know if Bowman has any latest needs them wanting to know about the latest needs of something of Bowman's investigation into the missing of Barbara and all that while Nancy would be Ambassador would be the one that Ambassador would be speaking to Bowman and Ambassador Johnson secretly slipping to that prepared Walkman of Nancy basically somewhere uh, in Murray Bowman's house with the scenario that I was gently slipping and hiding this Walkman after turning on it a recording button and them slipping it somewhere and basically they would want to and then I was looking Johnson and Nancy continuing the fake act and I was looking them totally asking about the latest leads of comment connecting to again then and Nancy and Johnson will be totally actually saying the goodbyes and then we would be leaving the house with the scenario of Bowman is the scenario that I'm looking but I was looking it would be only at that point for from Bowman's point of view it would be only at that point until that point Bowman might have had absolutely no doubt or suspicions connecting to of Nancy of Jonathan had any sort of involvement to like I'm referring like after their whole meetings that will be happening in that government house, like I'm referring that government which is totally finding like the whole body language and like the way Nancy and Johnson even interacting to like government, all that like he will be finding all that government will be like noting all that and finding all that like weird and strange stuff in the brain. So like I'm referring it would be only from that point on like government would be starting to like suspect Nancy and Johnson the possibility of like them even having like any sort of like involvement, remote involvement to like Barbara's missing that basically government was thinking that from that point on like the scenario that I'm putting and from that point on the super electric government would be on the would be starting to like spy Nancy and Jonathan. It's like from that point on like the even the scenario that I'm putting in like the name of the remission right now with like Nancy right now warning like Barbara's mother and warning to like meet with like Barbara's mother like next day like 9 a.m. at this park like in the different meet my Brazilian version that like Barbara's mother on like the very day won't be the next day won't be able to like make it to that park. Like even before that I'm putting especially this like this one call has been like traced by like is being overturned by like the remaining of like Brenner's team like I'm like them totally creating like an accident. It's like the scenario that I was bringing. Like I'm looking like Nancy and Jonathan like showing up early to that path. It's like the scenario that I'm bringing. And of course, bring like for Jonathan like totally like deciding to like go along with like Nancy. It's definitely to give that courage for like Nancy once like she will be like confessing the truth about like Nancy's involvement in like Barbara missing disappearance and everything in the Baba death actually like basically. So like I'm moving Nancy would be like totally might not be able to like hold that weight within her chest anymore. So like I'm moving Nancy might be actually planning on like confronting the actual true full detail and everything. So also like a positive that I'm looking. So but like Nancy I'm looking definitely not being able to do that. Like even before that like I'm looking like while father of mother would be on her way to that path like I'm looking like her like meeting with like an accident like scenario and that would be like a created accident created by like the remaining members of like Pranasti to have like to know to have like the information like the critical information about like Pranasti experience not get leaked most different like such an accident happening and like Papa of the mother ending up dying was like the scenario that I'm looking that way like of the already existing extreme guilt within Nancy connected to like Barbara stuff, like even like doubling, like basically to like the point of like Nancy feeling like even more extremely guilty, drowning in guilt and like suffocating in extreme guilt. But like Nancy at that point absolutely sure that basically Barbara's mother's death as well certainly was due to that single phone call from Nancy to like Barbara's mother. It's definitely my good impression. So that will but like I'm referring this in and that incident of like Barbara's mother that like I'm referring like would be what like totally would be like totally creating like suspicion from Murray Bowman towards like Nancy and Johnson like the scenario that I'm referring especially because like I'm referring like Bowman like figuring out like the details and basically figuring out that basically like where exactly like when like Barbara's mother had died in that accident, like where exactly she was heading off towards, like basically like Bowman figuring that out and eventually finding that out that basically like Barbara's mother was on her way to like meet with like Nancy when the accident happened, like basically. So like I'm looking that way, like just single phone call right now from Nancy to like Barbara's mother, like totally putting Bowman on like Nancy and Johnson's state, literally like the scenario that I'm looking and Bowman like totally relentlessly like spying and like often like crossing purposefully crossing paths with like Nancy and Jonathan and offer like basically like intimidating them with like Christians and everything. Like it's like the scenario that I'm thinking. Like it would be like he would be making it obvious that basically he has such an extreme suspicion on like Nancy and Jonathan for like the possibility of like them having an involvement not only in like Barbara's death but that also like also on like the death of Fatma as well. It just might just like the scenario that I'm really looking and try to reimburse. Technically, I'm reimbursement right now as for like offer right now, finding out through the like the coordinate that like 11 has left the house like and offer even taking that call in front of like the doctor, the current doctor in charge of like the energy level reimbursement for definitely right now the scenario to be like definitely 11 making it and 11 right now since like 11 is already and like the hopping still like 11 right now with the greatly and the seeing like Mike, Lucas, and Dustin and Will together with this like new girl. And basically 11 straight away think that like they have all forgotten about like 11 and even Mike as well like has totally forgotten about like 11 numbers like 11 maybe totally think that basically even the previous night like Mike might have already attempted to using the radio phone trying to like reach 11 and like 11 might have maybe 11 think that basically from like so like the previous night might have been like with like Mike even once again failing to like really to be able to like, communicate with like 11 even like the previous night might have finally given up and so like they might even Mike as well might have and like the others as well might have already replaced 11 with 10 users would be like Maxine along the lines that 11 would be straight away singing on seeing like Mike doesn't understand along and will along with the new girl along with them and I was like it would be only 11 that would be seeing them but like they won't be seeing 11 like I'm looking like 11 from a distance like seeing Mike doesn't understand along with like and will along with like Maxine's like scenario that I'm doing and then like I'm looking like 11 only famous fingers are and like 11 tearing up and basically 11 lakh and extremely disappointed 11 lakh walking away with like the scenario that I'm looking and like at that point since like as 11 would be walking away from like the Hawkins school itself like I'm looking like Hopper like literally rushing to like Hawkins school because like Hopper would be like as well as that like 11 would have left to totally see Mike so like I'm looking like Hopper showing up to that school and basically Hopper straight away, regular Hopper will be showing up itself like Hopper straight away, everything like 11 walking away from that school. So like I'm Hopper quickly taking 11, getting 11 into like Hopper's jeep and I was like, right then itself like I was looking like, the doctor might have definitely found like, the body language of Hopper and like he took the call from his like subordinate in front of like the doctor in charge of like then of the patient like the local might have found it like extremely good. So like he might have straight away sent like one of his men to like basically spy on Hopper right now and follow Hopper. So like I'm wondering like one of like the doctor's men like basically seeing like Hopper taking 11 and basically like leaving with like 11 on the leave. So like I'm wondering like that way like at that point would be when like I'm wondering like the doctor would be like reporter. One of his men would be like would have followed Hopper would be like reporting to doctor at that point that like 11 is still alive. So like at that point that like the like stop being like absolutely stopped and surprised that one is like the scenario that I put over again. So the next scenario to be like the moment that Hopper will be like swiftly getting like 11 back into like Hopper's jeep and like will be that driving off from like in front of like Hopper's school. At that point, the family was like Mike would be totally seeing like Hopper G's like right in front of like driving off from in front of like Hawkins school at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking and Mike alone I'm looking like noticing that like Mike feeling kind of like those people first to like why to like Hopper like I'm looking like Mike would be most likely seeing Hopper in driving off the Jeep at that point scenario from a distance from the school is like the scenario that I'm looking so like Mike feeling kind of it like kind of ranges like the scenario that I'm in. Yet like Mike at that point will be totally missing 11. So be like sitting right next to that pop up in that very thin detail like scenario that I'm right. So like and I'm going to bring like so that like I'm going to bring like definitely trying like the doc like basically like basically creating a like strategical plan to like basically and creating a like uh an army of like men to like basically assigning giving them the order to like basically to and then people like them totally like one of the men that totally finding like following strictly following Hopper all the way to finding that house dealing with them like the force to have like 11 and Hopper is living it. So like I'm living in that house being found out and reported to like the doctor in charge of like the laboratory. And I'm living like him finding like him calling out like a huge army of like his men and basically like giving them the task to like basically to like in like the middle of the night for them to like totally attack that ambush that house within the force and like for them to like basically hopefully capture and bring back 11 to like turn of 11. It's like the scenarios that I'm doing. So them like the doctors being given that order by the doctor and I was like them showing up in like the middle of the night like basically like those great army showing up into like that house but like I was like and I was like that night would be like the perfect night of like the 356th day after like element going missing, like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking, it will be in that very night. Like I'm looking like after like finally might will be fed up with like even like the anniversary day might hoping for a miracle might like they're trying to communicate using the radio point to like 11 multiple times and failing. And as Mike would be fed up and about to walk away, like I'm looking like 11 finally totally uh, talking back to like the radio phone, like 11 voice like Mike hearing in that radio phone at that point, it's like scenario that I'm building. And like I'm building like Mike would be like totally shocked and surprised, and I'm building Mike will be so totally excitement happy, and as like Mike will be certainly talking towards like 11 through that radio phone. Mike and 11 will be like talking like at that very moment itself, I'm going to be when like this like for adapt from like the entirety of like the army of like the doctor from like the energy laboratory, like they will be like uh, doing their ambush attack on that house of their like hopper these like the hopper and 11 will be like the scenario that I'm doing. So like at that point, I'm going like 11 totally escaping that house and moving like hopper totally trying to hopper totally straight away telling 11 to like run, and basically like 11 totally like straight away escaping that house, and basically 11 totally running through that forest, and I'm looking like in that way like I'm looking like 11 totally like trying they're running deep within like into like the forest, and I'm looking like usually maybe like that forest will be connected to like the forest is also like about that I'm looking or like that exact forest in which like that house is in fact would be also not the forest is also like after the other that another and the game is like 11 totally escaping and moving running deep into that forest and eventually ending up in like Castle Biofuel like scenarios that I'm putting and 11 totally hiding in Castle Biofuel that point is like the scenario that I'm putting. So like I'm looking like five and like I'm looking uh like those men of like those great army of men of like that of like I'm looking like them talking of like find 11 and that one is like the scenario that I'm considering. So like my preparation for like that way like 11 like for the time being like escaping succeeding and like escaping from like the huge army of like the doctor in charge of like the energy laboratory and basically like those men like returning back to like the laboratory and reporting back to like the doctor saying they have missed like 11. They were able to capture 11. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And like the doctor would be like extremely frustrated and fuming at that point, like the scenarios that I'm doing. And like I'm looking like from that point on, also bring like for like 11 to like stay at like Castle Bias, and I was like my that entire night would be like after like all of a sudden like having this like conversation with like 11 like getting cut off like due to like all those like men of like that doctor like basically like trying to capture 11 like basically after that like I was in that entire night like my would have like right through with like radio completely trying to like reach out to like 11 but like I was sure that time like 11 might have been like running deep into that forest and basically I'm looking by at the time like will be making it to like Castle Bias like I'm looking hiding in like Castle Bias like I'm looking like will be probably stopped that and I'm looking like 11 only boarding a state like those scenarios that I'm looking. So like I'm looking next day while Mike would be waking up like Mike totally trying to like using the radio phone and trying to communicate with 11 and still not happening and I was like that eventually I'm also like maybe it will be like after like Mike would be returned back from school and I'm also like as like Mike would be like Mike would be like after like communicating with 11 I'm also like Mike totally even phoning like Lucas and Dustin and all of them and telling that like 11 is back like that 11 is like still alive and all that but but like I'm also like and so like I'm also like yeah like I'm also like while at school like I'm also like maybe like Mike Lucas and Dustin and all of them not using like the radio machine from like school, especially when with Cambridge. So I think maybe because like I was like by the time that when like Hopper and all of my people understand all of them work together, like I'm looking Hopper myself, maybe even told them about about like men how they like tap all the radio signals and everything is continuing. So like I'm looking, maybe like because of like by now like my kind of stuff being informed but like maybe of stuff about the ambassador like them deciding not to like use like the main radio phone at school. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. Going to bring my campus is not even taking that remote with either and I'm looking like Mike and Lucas and of them and will like all of them like maybe Maxine as well like all of them like that after school like basically all of them like running back to that Mike's home and basically from Mike's basement like I'm looking like they will be like the technical radio phone like them trying to like call 11 like repeatedly until like 11 will be finally waking up from that Japanese bias, and like finally 11 will be like communicating back to like finally getting and like the connection happening, the communication happening, and like all of them like being shocked at basically 11 still being alive. That I'm fearing like 11 voice like the scenario that I did. So like from that point on, when them having their secret meeting at like Castle Bios, like the of like surrounding is like the scenario that I'm like 11 telling them that she's in Castle Bios, and it's that way like that secret meeting happening with like every day after like school, like and like Mike Lucas and Dustin, as well as Maxine and the like with you secretly meeting up with like 11 in gathered by from that point of like in the scenario that I'm listening. While poor Hopper would be like desperately and frantically searching for like 11 all over. It's also like a possibility that I'm looking. So then definitely in my impression right now with like 11 already having entered into like the school building, and basically Mike, Lucas and Dustin as well as like Will and Maxine like all been splitting up to that point. That like I'm looking right now for like the scenario that I'm looking for like it would be most likely 11 that I'm looking to be like coming it to the like the scenario that I'm looking, and the moment 11 is seeing that like then will be straight away you have to like recognize that basically will be straight away realizing that it's definitely creature from a monster from like the battle world would be around like 11 would be straight away realizing, and 11 person like by the time the hand person like Dustin should be like the first person to like see 11 like so like I'm looking like as they would also be first support star like I'm looking like Dustin totally running into 11, but like the moment Dustin would be running into 11 like what Dustin would be seeing would be like 11 totally using like super power like totally like destroying and taking the life of like the scenario that that like totally screaming in pain and like to be dying by 11 like superpowers of like the scenario. It would be like that shock which like the film would be like even uh seeing 11 as well as finding dark as like the scenario that I'm looking. So like right then like 11 taking dark life, and basically like Dustin would be like in a confused like kind of like a state because like there will be that happiness within Dustin is that basically to realize that 11 is still alive, and yet like I'm looking like it will be like the loss of Dark like basically 11 like harming and takes the life of Dark like I'm looking that only overshadowing even the happiness of like seeing 11 after like a long time, and I'm looking like Dustin will be like totally angry and fuming against like 11, and Dustin will be like, totally shouting at 11. It's like the scenario that I'm totally protect at that point. This is the news for like taking that like just like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like Mike and others like hearing the things voice, and I'm looking like right and like all of them showing up, and like Mike and all of them being shocked at seeing 11 is like the scenario that I was like. But like I'm looking like at that point, along with all of them, there will be Maxine as well. So like 11 will be like totally on top of like the shouting from Dustin, like 11 would be totally, even though 11 would be will be like happy to see Mike, but like I'm looking like at that point, if 11 noticing like just new girl along with them. So like that couple was like seeing Maxine, and that couple was like Dustin shouting at like 11. That 11 would be like at that point only thinking that like so like Mike has like finally given up and basically forgotten about 11, and has gotten they have totally gotten replaced 11 with this new girl matching. Along the lines, Ambassador maybe like 11 feeling, and Ambassador like 11 at that point like feeling extremely sad, and then like 11 totally running away from like the school. It's like the scenario that Ambassador, and at that point Ambassador Mike and others like totally running after like 11, and Ambassador like right then like I'm thinking like 11 would be making it to like the premises of like school outside of like school building, and right then it's like Hopper showing up with the Jeep, and like Hopper like physically taking 11, and like Hopper at that point Hopper would be totally seeing like Mike Lucas and the and all of that. So like those are like yet like Hopper like not without even saying any word like I'm like Hopper physically taking 11, and Hopper like trying off with this like Jeep like the scenario that possible scenario that I'm looking at the flavor framework right now like the search to like find out like the spin right now like hearing like the notes of like from nearby like the flavor framework right now that like one like Will would be right now opening one of the doors that right now but the like what Will would be totally seeing will be like dark totally leaving through like a portal like I'm looking like dark will be like creating like a portal right now, and about and dark will be like leaving through that portal and escaping into like the battle world of the scenario that I'm looking, and will be like the only one that would be like seeing that it happen. It's like the scenario. that I'm looking for different and of the reaction. I'm also putting like at that point I'm looking at like the bottle would be like an extremely tiny bottle and that in that tiny through that tiny bottle that leading to the backward and that tiny bottle would be that and at that point I'm looking like very totally quickly shouting out for like my clicks and the and all of them. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. But like by the time they will be like running towards like well numbers or something like that bottle would have closed like the scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point, that Will totally telling like my customers and all of them that they believe that Shark left through that possible like scenario that I'm observing. But like I'm observing like Dustin won't be believing Will at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm observing. Dustin will be the only thing that they believe that Will had basically taken the life of that of Shark. Like Will had basically taken the life of Shark and basically that was like a lie Will was saying to Black totally hide that from the community along the lines of the consistent totally like assuming and misunderstanding is like the like scenario that I'm referring to like that way like I'm referring that resulting in like a huge dispute between like Dustin toward like Mike Lucas and Will like the scenario that I'm doing and Dustin totally like would be getting like extremely over emotional and angry and I'm sort of furious and I'm looking Dustin totally telling how like Mike had basically tried to like take the life of that as soon as like that just now as well as like basically Mike and Will wanting to like take the life of like that. So like you actually that they actually did it and basically had taken the life of like Sharp and basically now like Mike and Will and this might have been also their strategy to like basically take that life and basically to lie and trick Justin and basically like that what happened in the along the lines and when Dustin totally accusing like Mike and Will at that point is like the scenario that I was doing and Dustin and everything at that point is like leaving along like Maxine from like the group for like the time being like the scenario that I'm doing. That way like once again like that whole split like that whole dispute and resulting in like a split happening between the friends like Mike, Lucas, and Dustin, and Will and Matt things like the scenario that I'm looking. And I'm looking like at this time, like I'm looking it would be like Lucas that would be like taking the role of like Dustin from like the past, and basically it would be like the mediator and those different while Will and Mike would be on one side, and like Dustin and Maxine would be on the other side. I'm looking like it would be Lucas that would be like most likely like playing the role of like the mediator and so eventually putting in the effort and bringing them together is like will open scenario that I'm looking on the drink and I was 300%. So the 300% right now was like 11 right now. So links and standing to Mike and assuming that Mike doesn't love is like maxing like I'm looking that the Mike like just very night as well. I'm looking like Mike like specifically like Mike right now like hearing from like Maxine how like Maxine felt like a magnet for Maxine. Like I'm looking like definitely Mike would be totally feeling as if like I'm looking like Mike on this very night like I'm looking will be calling using the radio phone even more than usual trying to like reach out to like 11. But like I was looking like 11 will be like seeing being able to like spend all the time see all this like even while in like Hopper's like house but like still 11 lakh will be extremely salty and angry. So like my like the scenario that I'm looking yet like I'm looking like typical I was mentioned that like on the 300 bands even though like I'm looking like on 350 night like basically of like since like that anniversary night of since 1 year after like 11 going like I'm looking like that night definitely while Mike would be like really trying to like use the radio phone and trying to like reach 11 like eventually on that very night when I'm looking like 11 will be finally be able to like make that communication of squatting back and basically Mike even realizing that basically 11 is still alive. Going back to the still alive would be only happening on that 300 nights. Uh, Definitely my think 300. So like definitely level 300 right now with like Will right now once again like running away from like the spider like most of and basically right now the going top advice to like Will to like face the amount of cash or like the PLC backfiring and I'm like that is like costing Will looks like this scenario that I'm currently because like right now but like Will right now facing like the monster and the different like the monster like the huge spider like monster and the different from which like I'm going to sprint out or like raining on to like Will right now. It's like the scenario that I'm doing, and that dark or like swallowing Will is like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, I'm looking like Will totally like fully being controlled is like the scenario that I'm doing. From like by like the monster that will be thrown within Will that understand that it will be to that monster that will be growing within will that like the spider like monster from like the currently from like the parallel world would be able to like sense and would be like communicating from like the parallel world within the brain. So like I'm living those monsters like basically in that through that communication with that presence of that giant spider like monster in that specific location in like the parallel world like totally hitting that monster that and those monsters that will be grown within will like the strength to like control will take control of will Will's body even during daytime as like the scenario that I'm looking and I'm looking that way like I'm looking like will being getting controlled by like the monster and I'm like it will will won't be like that conscious at all. It's like it will be just like the monster that would be like controlling Bill and I'm looking like Will at that point maybe like I'm looking through like the school building like I'm looking like Will totally running in like for like the scenario that I'm looking and like Mike totally seeing that like will just passing and that will be in such extreme speed as well like that will be like running on both is like for like this like scenario that I'm looking at like in an inhuman manner like I'm looking will totally like running with such extreme speed in for like the scenario through like the school building is like scenario that I'm looking at all the students are getting scared on seeing will like basically acting in such a manner like the scenario that I'm looking at like basically Mike Lucas like also seeing this or like Mike alone like seeing this as well as like the scenario that I'm looking at. And I'm looking like this that way like so they're running out of like the school building and basically like right then like I'm looking Joyce would be like Joyce is right now rushing towards like the school to like basically find Will like I'm looking like right as like those would be about this car would be like about to make it towards like school like I'm looking Joyce would be like getting that after shock of like a step with like right in front of a car like I'm looking like Will would be like crossing the road while running on for like being controlled by the monsters like the scenario that I was going to be like the very same build uh but if he won't be conscious at all and he'll be like running on for like in an inhuman manner it's like the scenario that I'm looking that way like will only running into like the force that would be right there is like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like will only running into deep into and escaping deep into like that force at that point, it's like the scenario that I'm looking at and my potential and like the worry choice as well as like my because and the selectively chase me after will is like the scenario that I'm looking at. Maybe like the more entering into like that force at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. I'm looking like maybe like 11 at that point would be actually in that force. So like I'm looking to that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like this like monster control will on for like totally running towards running into 11 in that force is like the scenario that I'm looking. So at that point, like 11, totally on seeing like the form like a bill like like 11 totally at that point, like using her superpower and in the form like a bill will be like straight away like charging towards like 11, trying to like attack 11 at that point. It's also like a bubble that I'm looking. So like 11 at that point using her superpowers on like superpowers on Bill and I was like exactly like the bus 11 had Bill get attacked just like I'm looking like 11 attacking Bill. And definitely right now so like I'm looking like since it's been like I'm looking like 11 would be like ensuring to like basically like to not badly hurt Will, but like I'm looking like so like using 11 using a superpower in like a control manner like at that point like scenario that I'm looking yet like that superpower attack of like 11 that causing like that control by the monster over Will to like totally come undone. It's like the scenario temporarily for the 19 like scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking by then like choice as well as like Mike Lucas and like all of them making it there like the scenario that I'm looking. But like I'm looking since that incident um, and at that point we will be getting back to check conscious. That like one scenario that I'm looking or like I'm looking like the most of losing it's like control over Will, but like Will will be like line up on the floor and like those only rushing Will to like the hospital like the other scenario that I'm looking and maybe it will be at that point that maybe like Mike Lucas Mike totally shocked me seeing like around like Lucas and all of them like softly seeing like 11 and finding out that 11 is like still alive. It's like not talking to that and like I'm looking like but still I'm looking from that day on like I'm looking like the old zombie name calling of that build I'm looking at that could like get even worse like the scenario that I'm looking for build like getting made fun of and basically mocked and made fun of and like seen as like weird by everyone at school on that going on. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring, and that way like will having to like suffer even more with like the scenario that I'm doing, and maybe like I'm going to bring like will even deciding to like not go to like school anymore, like will even take such a decision and will staying at home, like also like about what is that I'm doing that way like my little understand like to meet will like them going having to go to like Will's home like also like and at that point like Will would be like only would be like acting indifferent to like my kind of outcome, like really that will leave it only absolutely disturbed and frustrated, but like you can find that like discomfort and everything that's like going on with like the issues that's going on with this like and everything is also like about the desire and everything. So such kind of interest is what I'm looking at and I'm trying.